In 2021, all California voters had the option to vote by mail. The permanent vote by mail program has been in place since 2002. Over the past 20 years, the percentage of voters that vote by mail has evolved from 27.08% to 86.72%. Voters have demonstrated that by and large they prefer voting by mail. Since the November 2020 general election, by law, all active registered voters in California are automatically sent ballots in the mail for every election. Voters still have the option of voting in person. Over these past 20 years, the procedures to safeguard vote-by-mail voting and making voting easier have matured into a robust, secure process. However, many voters are not aware of the multiple safeguards and checkpoints that keep their votes safe and secure. To ensure the public's trust, several counties have come together to show you the process of these vote-by-mail ballots.
Okay, so my name is Tommy Gong, and I'm the Chief Deputy Clerk Recorder for Contra Costa County, and I'm the number 2 in the office, the department assistant department head for the Clerk Recorder department. We comprise not only of elections, but the Clerk Recorder function for the county, and so that's a whole other world aside from elections.
Shannon Boucher, I'm the Registrar of Voters for Santa Clara County, where we conduct federal, state, and local elections.
I'm John Tudor, and I'm the Registrar of Voters for Napa County. And my job is to make sure that this incredible team I have all the resources they need to put on the safe, secure elections that we run.
My name's Linda Roberts, and I am the Marin County Registrar of Voters, and I lead the Department of Elections.
Why is it that some voters receive more than one ballot?
Voters are only mailed one ballot, but a voter may need a replacement ballot. We will cancel their first ballot and only count the replacement ballot sent to the voter.
What safeguards are in place to prevent double voting?
Not only is the system set up to ensure that only one vote-by-mail ballot will be valid for a voter, but also in terms of the registration process. Because of the statewide database that was established in 2016, counties now are able to see when a voter moves from one county to another and to ensure that, again, that they only voted once. So for example, they might have been issued a ballot earlier in their original county, and then they moved like a week later and re-registered in the new county that they moved to. And so with today's technology with a statewide database, we would be able to detect that that person moved and that we would need to be sure that they only voted once, whether in their original county or in the second county that they moved to.
In California, who can return a vote-by-mail ballot on behalf of a voter?
A voter can designate anyone to return their ballot. We encourage voters to choose somebody who they know personally and who they trust as their designated person to return their ballot.
What can voters do to ensure their vote-by-mail ballot was received by the elections office?
So there are 2 ways that people can do that. They can sign up for something called Ballot Tracks, which is a statewide system which sends them notices when their ballot is mailed, sends them a notice when their ballot is received by us. Also in Napa County on our own website, we have a portal where people can look up their information by last name and birth date, and they can see the status of their ballot, whether it's been mailed, whether it's been received, and whether in some cases, if there's a problem, like they forgot to sign the return envelope, or if we can't match their signature, and that gives them a heads up along with a letter that we send them to come in and fix that.
What is the process of collecting vote-by-mail ballots from the drop boxes?
So drop boxes, ballot drop boxes are a relatively new process in California. It's been around for a few years, but I will say that when the governor required for counties to send a vote-by-mail ballot to every registered voter, that along with it came the utilization of ballot drop boxes located throughout the communities of a county, for example. In so doing then, we had to apply processes that would protect the security and the integrity of the vote-by-mail ballots, just like we do with ballots that are cast in person on election day. We would have them, we would send teams of 2 out to at least 2 people in order to maintain security and integrity, 2 people would go out to empty the drop box, multiple drop boxes, that being the case, and then to return them to our elections office. And they would fill out forms so that we would know that they picked up from each location on what day and what time and who were the folks that were doing it, so that we can keep a chain of custody over the entire process.
How are drop boxes secured?
They're secured in a couple of ways. Physically, to the ground using bolts into the concrete, or if that's not an option, then we have industrial strength chains, and they are chained to a secure object, such as a post, a metal post, something that's not movable. And we also put a seal over the lock of the drop box every time the ballots are retrieved. A new seal is put on that lock so that we know that the box wasn't tampered with.
Are the ballots picked up from the post office or an in-person voting location treated any differently?
Ballots are treated the same way, whether picked up at the post office or a voter votes in person.
What are the chain of custody procedures and the 2-person rule?
Yes, these are the old tried and true methodologies to ensure the integrity of our ballots and of the election. We always have 2 people with the ballots at any time, especially when they're opened, that there are 2 people with the ballots, because it always guarantees that there's no funny business happening with the ballots. The ballots will walk off by themselves, or marks are being made on them that weren't made by the voters. You always have 2 people on this honor system that you're ensuring that none of that sort of stuff is happening, and therefore ensures the integrity. Chain of custody procedures are, the logs that are completed to ensure that ballots are being followed the whole path of travel that it needs to in order to eventually be counted. So if you have 100 ballots that you received, that you had 100 ballots that you performed signature checking on, that 100 ballots that were counted unless you had a few that were challenged, and that those number of ballots are the number that were counted.
What is the next step after ballot envelopes are received in the office?
In our department, the first step of processing vote-by-mail ballots is through our sorter. And the sorter will check the signature on the envelope against the voter's record to make sure it compares.
How does signature verification work?
So in our county, we verify every signature with human eyes. So the signature on the return envelope, as I said, is captured by the machine. It's photographed, so to speak, and sent as an image to our computer system. That signature from the ballot envelope shows up with the person's signature from their registration card, and we also have their signature from their prior ballot envelopes for the last 3 or 4 elections. So we have about at least 1 and as many as 4 or 5 examples of their signature. And the person verifying signature looks at the signature on the ballot envelope, looks at the signatures either from the registration card or prior ballot envelopes, and then they make a decision if it's valid or not. If they verify the signature, the ballots get ready to be processed for counting. If they don't verify the signature, the ballots are stopped at that point and are sent back to our regular staff to review. If they don't like the signature, I see every final rejected signature, because I'm not going to take away someone's right to vote without my personally looking at it.
Where do verified vote-by-mail ballots go after they have been processed by the machine?
Yes. So after signature comparison, the ones that are accepted, all of the ballots that were scanned, let's say in a tray by the machine, let's say 100 ballots were captured. They were scanned, and then they were also captured their signature and then compared. So let's say out of 100 ballots, you have 10 of them that are challenged. So we put that tray of ballots back through the sorter a second time, and it will sort out the ones that are challenged and keep those closed, so to speak. Don't open those, and then it will open the ones that are good. And so it does a sorting for us in order to know the ones that are prepared that can be counted.
What happens to vote-by-mail ballots that are not verified?
If it doesn't compare, it will be kicked out into a different bin, and then those signatures are manually verified by election department staff.
What is the process if a signature doesn't match or there is no signature on the envelope?
Yes, these are the situations, as I was describing, when it sorts out those ballots that are challenged. These are the ones that are subject to a second check by supervisors, and if we ultimately decide that they are challenged, then we're allowed by law now to give voters a second chance at these vote-by-mail ballots, and we send them what is called cure letters. These letters ask for them to sign that letter and to return it to us. So therefore, if they forgot to sign their envelope or the signature didn't compare, now they can submit a second example of their signature. And this is something in the law that came about fairly recently. I think it really builds the faith in the system and gives voters a second chance to cure their ballot.
When are the counties allowed to open the vote-by-mail envelopes and begin processing the ballots?
Well, you can start as early as a week before the election, and of course the large counties, which count 3 shifts a day, every day, open as soon as they can. We start opening ballots on the Friday before the election, and we start counting on the Saturday before the election. With 50 to 60,000 ballots to count, we're able to process them in that shorter time frame. So we count Saturday, Sunday, and Monday before Election Day. If necessary, we count on Election Day. And we manage to count all the ballots that we've received by the Sunday before the election. And they all come out, those results, at 8:01 p.m. on election night.
What security procedures are taken to ensure the confidentiality of the vote?
Well, when a ballot is removed from an envelope, the envelope and the ballot are separated, and once that ballot is out of the envelope, the ballot is completely confidential. There's no way after that to link a ballot to an envelope or to the voter. And our procedures deal with the way of handling those ballots so that the people taking the ballots out of the envelopes don't look at the person's name or party or any personal information. They turn the ballot upside down so the name is face down to remove the ballot.
What safeguards are in place to ensure that a voter doesn't vote by mail and in person or in another county?
One of the requirements of the Help America Vote Act is that every state is to establish a statewide voter registration database. What this essentially does is it links up, in California, it links up all 58 counties so that it becomes like a single voter registration database that's a combination of all 58 counties. In so doing, it would provide counties duplicate voter registration information so that we can combine those records when they're discovered. It also ensures that a voter only votes once by checking their voting history, both voting by mail or voting in person, for example. So these are the things that the tools that are provided to us in order to ensure that a voter only votes once. Specifically within the county, we do things like, so we utilize what is called the electronic roster at our polling place. What this allows is real-time data. Let's say we already are processing our vote-by-mail ballots that we picked up on election day, and we put them through that envelope scanner. That in turn would give the voter voting history, and that is reflected in the electronic roster should a person try to come and vote in person. So we're going to look up that voter, and the system is going to tell us, hey, we already received this voter's vote-by-mail ballot. And so they wouldn't be able to vote a regular ballot. They would be allowed to vote a provisional ballot, but at least we were able to prevent them from being able to vote twice.
How are ballots counted?
Once a vote-by-mail envelope is determined to be eligible, we will open the envelope, remove the ballot, and send it through to our ballot counting machines.
If a ballot is unreadable by the counting machine, what happens next?
If our inspection team, as they're as they're getting ballots ready to count, if they find that a ballot is torn or damaged in any way, they will duplicate the ballot in teams of 2. They will take the damaged ballot and they will mark the exact same ballot in the exact same way so that the tally machine will count it. And the 2 ballots are linked together by a numbering system so that if we needed to compare, we could see that the votes were transferred correctly.
What is adjudication and how are the votes protected?
So as I described, the ballots are imaged and the software then starts determining what the votes are for each of the contests on the ballot. And where it cannot determine what the marks are for a particular race, it will raise it to the attention in the adjudication module. And it will say, hey, we're not sure if this is truly an overvoted situation where someone might have filled in one oval but decided they actually didn't want that vote and they wanted someone else's name instead. Oftentimes you'll see an X through one of the ovals and another oval filled in. If we can determine what the voter intent is, then we can tell the software, okay, disregard that ballot with the X through it so that the one that they did fill in can count. Traditionally, the older equipment would just say this is an overvoted situation and there will be no vote cast for that particular contest. So we're actually doing this on behalf of the voter, determining what marks that they ultimately wanted. Also, if there was a write-in, if they filled in the write-in oval and they wrote in the name of the candidate, the person has to be a certified write-in candidate, number one, and so we have to inspect this to be able to determine if this is a vote for that particular candidate. We also notice sometimes that a voter will fill in the oval for a candidate, but also fill in the write-in oval and write their name there. Again, that would cause an overvoted situation, no vote cast. But since we can see that it's the candidate's name, then we can remove that write-in vote so that the vote that's next to their name would actually be counted then. So it's really kind of a revolutionary technology that allows us to be able to modify these votes. The system keeps a log of everything that takes place. You have logins to say who's doing the work. And we always, again, have 2 people to determine the marks that are to be made here in that case, or the adjudication to be had. So we have to be in agreement as to the changes that we're going to make on behalf of a voter.
What is duplication?
When the machine can't read a ballot because either it was damaged, it had something spilled on it, or it was torn, we duplicate that ballot. So we take the original ballot, we stamp it with a number, 01, and then we make a duplicate of that ballot and we stamp that D1. And that duplicate ballot is then read by the machine, and the original ballot is kept so that if there's ever a question as to how the ballot was duplicated, we have the original and the duplicate.
After the vote is counted, what happens to the ballots? Are they archived or stored?
So not only our ballots, but all of our election materials related to a particular election are stored for 22 months. These are elections that are federal or state elections. Special elections, the retention period is 6 months, for example. But in so doing, we are required to box up all of these materials. They are to remain sealed unless ordered by a court, for example. They're to remain sealed for that 22-month period. And at that juncture, then they're destroyed after the 22-month retention period, unless there's a pending lawsuit, subject to a recount or something to that effect. But it's all governed by our courts that determine if there's any action to be taken in that way. But that's the reason why they're stored for that amount of time. In case there's any questions to come up about the results of the election, that's what all of the materials are for inspection and all of those things. But it has to be determined by a court. Not just anyone can say, oh, I want to be able to look at these materials. No, it has to be something determined by the courts.
Voters should get prepared, make a plan, and make sure to get out and vote.